the governor of Kogi State, Alhaji Yahaya Bello, the secretary to the state government, the senator representing Kogi Central, other distinguished persons at the high table, distinguished ladies and gentlemen of the press. We used to say gentlemen of the press, but we've moved beyond that now. We recognize also the ladies. Or rather, let me put it differently. My good friends. And my friend, especially, very young Acharaike, very young Acharaike, and I will go way back in Abeokuta. Don't mind his name, he's an Abeokuta boy. Okay, I've been given a topic, differentiating between facts and fiction in constructive reporting. And we have listened this morning to great strides in Kogi State. Right now, we're going to move from Kogi State to journalism and talk about our industry and how we fit into the reporting of the issues. Now, the key words in this presentation, fact and fiction, constructive reporting. And my first concern is, why fiction in reference to constructive reporting? Because when you say something is constructive, it means it's beneficial, it means it is useful, it means it will lead to change and progress. But when you use the word constructive, the opposite of it is destructive. In law, they will say, okay, when you say something is constructive, it means it doesn't fully state all the issues in plain terms. But in journalism, our job is to be constructive. Our job is not to destroy. That's the first thing that I get from that, title. And in any case, it talks about the purpose of journalism, which is to inform people, to keep people informed of the changing events, issues, and characters in the world outside. And the purpose is to empower the public, to make a sense of reality, so that people can make the best possible decisions about their lives, their communities, their societies, and their government. To set an agenda for society, as we all know. And the role we play, we keep emphasizing it. When people criticize journalists for being overbearing, we try to remind people that our job is constitutional. It's probably the only profession that is duly recognized, in the Chapter 2 of the Constitution. Under Section 19, the Constitution says the job of journalists is to uphold the principles, the fundamental objectives in Chapter 2, and to hold government accountable to the people. Chapter 2 of the Constitution is titled Fundamental Objectives and Directive Principles of State. And if you look at that, it talks about the responsibility of government, and we're told our job is to hold government accountable. So that's why we're the fourth estate of the realm. That's why we're the watchdogs of society. Okay, that's what we all know about. But the difference here is that the journalist is expected to be a committed observer. We are all, as journalists, members of society, but we're slightly different from other members of society because we help to identify the issues, provide the context, provide background information, and even provide explanation where it is necessary. And that role is a very responsible one. It's anchored on the principle of responsibility. Take doctors. When they graduate from medical school, they take an Hippocratic oath, which says your job as a medical doctor going into society is to save lives. Even if it is the life of an enemy, your duty first and foremost is to save that life, whatever may be the circumstances. Lawyers also, are sworn to an oath to be officers in the temple of justice. Now, by being officers in the temple of justice means that lawyers are also responsible to the ideal of justice. And that's why sometimes, when you see a particular legal practitioner stepping out of the code of conduct, the person could be debarred. Even if it's a senior advocate of Nigeria, as we had in one celebrated case, the person can be derobed. So, for journalists, therefore, it is important that we're very clear about our roles. And that takes me very quickly to ethics. I've mentioned that of doctors briefly, that of lawyers briefly. We as journalists too, we are governed by what is called Code of Ethics. And all our unions, the Nigerian Union of Journalists, the Guild of Editors is good, we have our presidents here, you know. All of these codes, they've been codified by the Nigerian press organization. And I find that particularly instructive. The opening paragraph of that code says, journalism entails, I'm quoting now, a high degree of trust. To earn and maintain this trust, it is important for every news medium to observe the highest professional and ethical standards. Now that code goes a step further in paragraph 2. And I think this is something to stress. I quote again, truth is the cornerstone of journalism, and every journalist should strive diligently to ascertain the truth of every event. Okay, if we are told that we have to distinguish between facts and fiction, and the code of ethics is saying truth is the cornerstone, is the most essential thing in journalism, it means we have no business with fiction. Fiction is for creative writers, people who write novels, people who write plays, people who produce movie scripts. So what this code is telling us is that if you want to write fiction, you are better off as a novelist, or as a dramatist, or, you know, as a filmmaker. Now that code now goes ahead. It says, it talks about editorial independence. Well, how much independence do we still have left in terms of reporting the news? But it says you must be independent. It talks about accuracy and fairness. You know, accuracy in another of the codes, I think the Guild of Editors one, it says accuracy, accuracy, accuracy is the job. So an accuracy, of course, is about facts, not fiction, because the public has a right to know. Then we're also told again that a journalist should refrain from publishing inaccurate and misleading information. And where misleading information has been published, prompt correction should be the mode. So if you have said something that is not correct and you are a journalist, either in government or out of government service, if you are in the private media, when you misinform the people, you have an obligation to correct. One recent example would be Ajuri Ngelale, presidential spokesperson, saying that President Tinubu was the first president in Africa to ring the bell on the floor of NASDAQ. Okay, people went after him, but he has immediately issued a correction to say, oh, the error is regretted. That means also, even when you are speaking for government, you are not allowed to publish fiction. Now, a journalist must hold the right of reply as a cardinal rule of peace. So what it means, therefore, in that code that I'm referring to, is that even when you have made a mistake, you allow people the right of reply. If you present one side of the story and there is another side, you give the people another side. Take what we've done this week. This week we focused heavily on the forthcoming gubernatorial election in Imo State in November. The APC team came and said, oh, only Governor Uzodinma can get back to Douglas House, as they call their government house. Okay. And that he had done very well with the security situation. The PDP people got on our neck and said, oh, those APC people, they were lying. The following day, we put them there. They gave their own version of the story and said, oh, in fact, it's insecurity we'll deal with. Then Labour Party called. Why are you people featuring APC and PDP? We too, we have something to say. The third day, we brought Labour Party. That's the cardinal principle, right of reply, because it's an open platform that must provide balance. Then, of course, there are other things in that code about privacy, respecting the privacy of individuals and their families. Some people say, well, once you are in government, we can say anything about you. In fact, your wife is fair game. No. If the story is not in the public interest, you are not required to publish it, to harass people just because they are in government. However, there is a principle that says volenta non fit injuria. That's a legal maxim. If you don't like heat, don't go near the kitchen. But the thing for journalists is that that particular story you want to report must be in the public interest. Otherwise, you are not being professional. Privilege and non-disclosure. When you interview people as a reporter, those people can enjoy certain privileges. They can say, for example, this is off record, non-disclosure. So you have to respect the privacy of that person. But, you know, a typical thing for a Nigerian reporter to say is that, anything you don't want journalists to hear, don't tell them. If you do that, then of course, you are breaching that trust, you know, between you and the source of information. Then, of course, that code, I'm going to run it through it quickly, talks about decency, not using offensive language. Talks about non-discrimination. Don't discriminate against people on the basis of ethnicity, religion, or association. Reward and gratification. Don't ask for cola. Communicua. In other words, journalists are not supposed to solicit for bribe, so that you can maintain that first item on the code of ethics, editorial independence. And then, of course, special emphasis on violence, not to glorify violence. In recent times, we've seen many of our colleagues, you know, even putting raw violence on the screen or publishing it. You know, it's about taste. Some newspapers will say, no, we don't publish gory pictures. And then, of course, children and minors, you know, respecting the rights of children, particularly where things like, crime, rituals, matrimonial causes are involved. Then, of course, access to information. Our job is to share information, to look for information. And Nigeria has a Freedom of Information Bill, now an act, FOIA. So, then public interest at all times. Public interest must be defended. Public good. And then social responsibility to promote democracy, justice, equity, peace, understanding. A reporter is not supposed to say, this democracy is not working. We have an alternative. No, you don't have an alternative. You know, the challenge here is about social responsibility. And then, of course, no plagiarism, copyright rules must be respected, and then defense of press freedom and responsibility. I've gone through this code because it, combines all the various other things that the unions have said. And I raised questions. Is this code a panacea to gross ethical misconduct? That's a question you yourself can ask. All these things, are we as professionals, as reporters, are we observing them? Do many reporters even know that there is a code of ethics that exists that guides journalists? Because these days now, you never know the boundaries. You just say anybody that is in government, we deal with him. We deal with him. That's a very popular phrase some journalists use. You are not supposed to deal with people. You are just supposed to report accurate facts. Then what is the role of the professional bodies? What are our unions doing to make sure that we stay by the codes? And I've raised the question, how are the practitioners responding to the ethical codes? The reason I've chosen this particular code of ethics by the Nigerian Press Organization is that it covers the field. And, this was reviewed. First, 1976, there is an amended version, which is the one I've extrapolated from, which became operative in 1996. So the argument is that most journalists observe this code in the breach. Journalists are not expected to publish fiction or to sensationalize the news. Accuracy, accuracy, accuracy. Absence of bias in telling the story, providing context, and in delivering the story. However, there seems to be a running battle between facts and fiction in the reporting of news. Whereas we as reporters have no business with fake news. What do I mean by this? We're in the information age, and that information age has been further extended and made more rapid by technology. We used to talk about the 24 hours news cycle, where news no longer travels at that speed rate. News now travels at the speed of light. Due to what Walter Benjamin calls the technical reproducibility of the age, which is about the effect that technology has had on the information processing and delivery process. We're in the digital age, the age of the internet, super connectivity. There are no more boundaries. We live in a world of social media, Instagram, TikTok, the information superhighway. And on that superhighway, news can be delivered just like that, immediately. So this has led to a redefinition of the information business as we know it. There is now a distinction between the traditional media and the social media, but it is also the age of convergence, where you find the traditional media behaving like the new media and using resources on both sides. So we're also, as a result of that, in the age of the citizen journalist. The citizen journalist has no training, no formal training for the most part. All he needs is his phone. It doesn't matter if that phone is the old Nokia type. Once it's a smartphone or whatever, then the man is in business. And that citizen journalist is not tied down by any codes. What now connects that citizen journalist and the mainstream journalist or the traditional reporter is that they are both in the business of providing information and processing information. And this provides a special challenge. Is the citizen journalist obliged to be accurate? The citizen journalist who runs a blog site or a website does so for most part for profit, for clickbaits, for traffic. Is he obliged to respect any code? Not quite, professionally. But the dilemma is that many of these bloggers are more influential than mainstream journalists. In fact, some of them get better financial rewards than the journalists working in mainstream journalism. But you, as the traditional mainstream reporter, are you obliged to adopt the same tactics? This, I think, is the big question here. But let's define the context. The context that I'm trying to talk about is the context of what is called fake news. We're in the age of post-truth, false news, alternative facts, false narratives, whichever you prefer out of all these times. The truth is that truth has become flexible within the information space. And you find many people preferring to report false or misleading information, junk news, simply because it's attractive. If you put a false narrative on your front page as a major headline, you see a lot of traffic. People will rush. If you hear that people are reading a story on Sahara Reporters because there is a particular title, in fact, it has reached a point now that people in mainstream journalism take their headlines from social media. Some take from WhatsApp. And most times, most of those things are not verified. Okay, manipulation of content is also a part of the problem. Fabricated content, you jazz it up so that the paper can sell, or so that your station can attract more eyeballs. Misinformation, even when your intention is not to harm people, you add something inside so that the story will be salacious. Disinformation, which is what politicians use a lot. We see a lot of that during the political season. Because you want to take advantage of your opponent, you just go to reporters, you meet with them, you give them some salacious stories. You say, this man, the secondary school he claimed he attended, he didn't attend. We have information. The reporter will say, okay, please give us the information so that we can say, go ahead with the story. When you put it out there, the public will find the information for you. They may never give you those facts. And you will have gone out there to malign somebody, helping somebody to have a political advantage. Malinformation, bad news. The word mal means, bad, more or less. So people put out bad news also because it sells. And the mantra is that nothing sells like bad news. That when a dog bites man, it's not news, though. That will not sell paper. But when a man bites dog, yes, that is news. And nothing spreads like wildfire but fake news. Because it's entertaining. And because people like to believe the worst of others. It's a psychological thing. And if you are a journalist in a society where there is mass psychosis, such I suspect we have in this place, in Nigeria, when you publish fake sensational stories, people would, quickly lap it up. And that's why any negative news that you put onto WhatsApp, before you know it's everywhere. So you don't then know what the gap is between the fact and the fiction. I cite one other example. Take this current story, the Mohbad story, the death of Mohbad. Now, which reporter has been able to establish the exact truth? Nobody, no media house. What you see there are all kinds of theories. Some people will say he was killed by this person. They have no proof. Some people will say, oh, this must be as a result of family witchcraft from the mother's village. Nobody has any proof. Some people will say, oh, he was poisoned. NDLA will come and say, we didn't poison him. So all kinds of things out there, and then in an environment where information is supposed to be accurate. So that's just another example. I can cite another example, but, in order not to politicize this discussion. But if you are looking for a quick one, the certificate issue about the president and all the details around it. Some people have taken a position, even when, a clear position has not yet been established. And you see people, promoting their newspapers and their broadcast